All right, Chapter 2, Part 2, Origins. The Foundations of Modern Communism. 100 years ago, communism was virtually unknown. Today, there is hardly a country in which its impact has not been felt. Phrases such as Cold War and Iron Curtain have become part of our everyday vocabulary. Our government, from the taxes we pay, must spend billions of dollars each year on national defense to fortify ourselves and our allies against communist aggression. Why are we so concerned about communism? Why do we find it necessary to spend so much for defense? The answer to these questions is that communists are committed to the destruction of our way of life and dedicated to the establishment of a world communist society. This conflict is not a struggle of our choosing, but even though we did not start it, we cannot ignore it. We must win the struggle if freedom is to survive. Karl Marx, the founder of modern communism. Communism as we know it today can be said to have begun with the theories of Karl Marx. He was born May 5th, 1818, and as was the case with so many socialist thinkers, he had a middle-class background. His father had been a prosperous attorney in the town of Trier in the Rhineland section of Germany. At a very early age, Marx demonstrated his intelligence and superior capacity to work. He attended the local high school and in 1835 entered the University of Bonn to study law. After a year, he transferred to the University of Berlin. It was while Marx was at the University of Berlin that he came under the influence of the philosophy of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. This influence was to have an impact upon the development of his theories. He ultimately submitted his doctoral thesis to the University of Jena and was awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in 1841, which was the same year The Essence of Christianity, a Criticism of Religion by Ludwig Feuerbach from 1804 to 1872 was published. Feuerbach was a materialist, and his philosophy subsequently had a great influence on Marx's intellectual development. For Marx had revealed an early interest in materialist philosophy. His doctoral dissertation, for example, dealt with the differences between the materialist philosophies of the Greek philosophers Democritus and Epicurus. Moreover, Marx, in the foreword of his dissertation, indicated his hatred of all religious beliefs, including a quote from Asclepius Prometheus, "In simple truth, I harbor hate against all the gods." Marx began contributing articles to and subsequently edited Rheinische Zeitung, a periodical in Cologne, Germany, until it was suppressed in 1843. After the suppression of the periodical, Marx moved to Paris with his wife, the former Jenny von Westphalen, whom he married that year. At that time, Paris was the center of socialist thought, and Marx plunged immediately into the extensive study of socialism, which is where he met Friedrich Engels, whom he had first met in Germany in 1842. Engels, the son of a successful textile manufacturer, was born in Barmen, Germany, November 28, 1820. After military service in the Prussian army, he moved to Manchester, England, in 1842 to work as a textile worker with his father as a partner. There he came to know the long hours, low wages, hazardous working conditions, and child labor, characteristic of the early stages of the Industrial Revolution. Communist Manifesto. In 1845, as a result of pressure brought by the Prussian government, Marx was ordered to leave France. He moved to Brussels, Belgium, where he was joined by Engels. The two men came into closer contact with the industrial labor force and in 1847 joined the League of the Just, a secret organization with headquarters in London. The League of the Just changed its name to the Communist League later that year. Marx and Engels agreed in the Communist Manifesto that was published under their joint authorship. Although published in 1848, explosive revolutionary social document has remained the credo of the world communist movement down to the present day. In 1850, despite a dispute arose among the leaders of the Communist League, and Marx transferred its headquarters to Cologne, Germany, where he had a group of adherents. He finds refuge in England. Shortly after the publication of the manifesto, a revolution broke out in France and soon spread to Germany. Marx and Engels returned briefly to Paris, then proceeded to Cologne, where they organized a daily paper. As a result of inflammatory articles against the Prussian government, Marx was tried for sedition. In 1849, the Prussian government expelled him from Germany. After a brief stay in London and Paris, Marx secured political refuge in London, where he remained for the rest of his life. Engels, after taking part in an unsuccessful revolution in Germany in 1849, followed Marx to England. During the early years of life in England, Marx and his family lived in dire poverty. The only period during which Marx had any type of steady employment was from 1852 until 1861, where he served as a foreign correspondent for the New York Tribune. Despite the hardships of studying and writing imposed upon his family, Marx because he received frequent financial assistance from Engels and was able to devote his life to the development of his social and economic theories. Marx transferred the headquarters from London to New York in 1872. From the time of his arrival in England, Marx had been concentrating on the economic aspects of his theory, making use of the extensive material available in the library of the British Museum. By the early part of 1858, Marx had decided to prepare a comprehensive analysis of the entire capitalistic system. His disputes with other socialists, however, and his activities in the First International delayed its publication until 1867, when the first volume of Das Kapital was published. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels had outlined their theory of the struggle between opposing classes in society. In Das Kapital, Marx attempted in a lengthy and tortuous argument to explain his views of capitalist exploitation of the working class. Yet even with the publication of that, Marx, to his disappointment, remained relatively unknown in England. The bitterness resulting from his personal life appeared at times to spill over into his writings and led to a running feud with other socialists. In addition, Marx was a vain and domineering person who scorned and ridiculed everything and everyone with whom he disagreed. As a result, his circle of personal associates grew steadily narrower in his declining years. Disappointed in the apathy of the English working class, Marx began studying conditions in the United States, where a series of financial crises began in 1873. He foresaw in America the highest development of capitalism in the shortest possible time, and following his own theory, he was led to the erroneous conclusion that the United States would be one of the first nations to achieve communism. Meanwhile, his health, which had never been good, grew steadily worse. He suffered from a liver condition, and his long, irregular hours, combined with a poor diet during his early years in England, were beginning to take their toll. He also developed a respiratory ailment. His long-suffering wife had developed cancer, and she died in 1881. Marx spent the following year traveling to Algiers and to France in an effort to regain his health. He returned to London following the death of his eldest daughter, and he died there in 1883, March 14th. His friend and collaborator, Engels, delivered the eulogy at Marx's burial at Highgate Cemetery in London, where his grave is still maintained. It was left to Engels to edit the final two volumes of Das Kapital, which Marx had left unfinished at his death, and those were finally published in 1885 and 1894. Engels briefly visited the United States and Canada in 1888. On his death, August 5, 1895, Engels left most of his estate to Marx's children. And we're going to end there today. And we'll take up on page 28 the Second International of Chapter 2, A Study of Communism. J. Edgar Hoover.